Are you ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. Notice hereby given, the City Council, City of Alpine, Texas will hold a regular meeting at 5:30 p.m. on April 19th, 2022 in City Council chambers at 803 West Highland Avenue in the City of Alpine, Texas, for the purpose of considering the attached agenda. This notice is posted pursuant to Texas Open Meeting Act Government Code, Section 551.043. Public notice: the use of cellular phones and electronic equipment is prohibited in the City Council chambers during meetings of the City Council, except for the purpose explicitly authorized by state law, Texas Government Code, Section 551.023. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with the official rules of decorum for City Council meetings, available at www.cityofalpine.com/decorum. Public comments are limited on the agenda items only. Individuals who wish to address the City Council may do so by completing the public comment card and by placing the completed card on the City Secretary's desk no later than 5 minutes before the commencement of the meeting. The public comment card may also be completed online at www.cityofalpine.com/council comments. A public comment card is not required for speakers who wish to comment on public hearing items. When speakers are acknowledged, please approach the microphone at the podium, state your name and the ward for the public record. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, and a bell will signal the end of each speaker's time. Please conclude speaker comments promptly when the bell rings. State law generally prohibits the council from discussing or taking any action on any issue not included on the agenda, but if appropriate, the council may schedule the topic for future discussion or refer the matter to staff. No personal attacks on council members or city staff will be allowed. The mayor and/or city council members can call a point of order to stop personal attacks. If an individual continues to personally attack an elected official or staff member in a meeting, they may be barred. Call this meeting to order. Everybody rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you. Secretary, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mayor, we do. Councilor Rodriguez is not present. Councilor Martin Sandate is not present, and all other council members are present. The notice of this meeting was posted by 2 p.m. on April 14th.
Okay, any public comments?
No.
None? Okay. Presentations, recognitions, we have none. City Mayor's report. Got just a little report, and that was going back a couple of weeks ago. I had reached out to our state rep, Eddie Morales, concerning this gas surcharge. It's still ongoing. There's cities that are in litigation on this extra charge that's being passed on to our customers. Also, City of El Paso on October the 22nd, they filed a lawsuit against the state saying that it's unfair for the people of West Texas to pay this charge because our average income is lower than any other of the larger cities. So they're still in litigation on that also. So right now, as of right now, City Attorney, we haven't paid that thing, correct?
We haven't paid, and we haven't received any new demands from West Texas Gas.
And there's a little kick to it when I talked to the representative today. He said that the governor received $1 million from the gas company. So you know where that went. We have to pay the piper if we're going to do it. So let's move on forward now with the city attorney report.
Well, Mayor and Council, nothing new. I've been working hard with Megan on the contract for the emergent EMS. We're about to have the final draft to probably finished and distributed to everybody tomorrow. We've been going back and forth with the little group, including the county and the county outside lawyer, the county judge. Megan's been very helpful. The Burgess been easy to work with. They're not demanding much. They're eager to work with us as a cooperative partner. We had municipal court this morning. We have it again on Thursday, and so we had I was talking with the contract for the trash pickup might need to be slightly tweaked a little bit coming up, so we may bring that to you all in the next month or two.
Okay. So right now, South County is still our ambulance service.
Ambulance service, but we anticipate being able to follow the proposed interim thing where we turn it over to emergent by the end of the month.
Okay.
We'll probably have a special council meeting to review and perhaps approve the contract maybe next week, maybe.
Yes, that's the game plan.
Okay. And we're gonna kind of.
But it's been vetted back and forth a lot, so I mean, it's not.
Okay, so we're gonna kind of coordinate it with the county, so when we all sign off, it's done at one time.
Right.
Okay. A good deal, because I was asked about that today. So
We're excited. We think it's going to be a good thing for Alpine and for the citizens here. We think we'll be able to have good service provided. And we have some teeth in the contract where we can look over their shoulder and make sure they do what they said they're going to do. And we get reports from them. Bring them to council quarterly, I think, to report.
okay, good. Yeah, because it's important that we keep that EMS service here and you know, try to keep it at a decent
Yes.
cost to the city and to the residents. So I think that was the best move that the council and the county made, was to select them. So we can move forward.
It's hard for the city to turn things over to the county, and it's hard for the county to turn things over to the city, but it's easy for both of them to turn things over to a third party.
Anything else, sir?
That's all.
Okay, thank you. City manager.
Oh, I guess one other thing, that we have a mediation coming up pretty soon on the Park Hill issue, unpaid bill. So
Okay,
I'll be attending that on behalf of the city, report back to you all on that.
okay, good deal. Thanks, sir. City manager.
Just a few items. Wanted to do some little department updates before we took April off, and we'll get them rescheduled to report on a more regular basis. That way they're not hitting you all at once every quarter. The gas utility, next week, they will be visited by the Railroad Commission of Texas for an audit. This is a big thing for them. They have successfully completed all of their audits for years with, you know, if you could grade them, it would be an A+, 100%. So next week, they will be busy from April 25th to the 29th, working on the audit with the Railroad Commission. We did receive our March billing from WTG that we invoice at the end of April. The rate for March sent out in April will be $13.23 in NCF. We did exceed our contract base load of 12,000 by 3,056 MCFs. So I did visit with JJ King, and we figured out how to formulate it and how to properly record it. We're going month to month currently as we build the database. It's been really hard because gas is not a regulated usage. If it's colder, we use more. If we have a warm winter, we use less. So looking at the past several years, the fluctuation in usage kind of has been doing this. So I know we had discussed about wanting to kind of average it out and then apply it for the whole year, so customers would get to see the same amount every month. As we look at it, we see where those spikes, those anomalies that would affect that average. And so we don't want that to happen so that we don't overcharge. The spot rate is the safest rate to only charge for what we're using. So we are looking into that further, but just to make it public aware, and of course we'll do a PSA afterwards, the rate for this month will be $13.23. Once we get that database completed and then call out the anomalies for those months that are just winter of 2021, not normal, we can look at averaging it out. The public utilities, They continue to address issues at the wastewater treatment plant. We did have to ask septic haulers to hold off on dumping at our wastewater treatment plant. Some of them were a little, not upset, but not aware of the issues. Our septic plant, our wastewater treatment plant is considered septic. It's just not handling and breaking down the disposal that we currently have, coming for just the residents and the commercial units. This also has affected our ability to provide effluent water to the golf course, excuse me. They have inquired on a few times, and I have reached out. Keith wasn't here, he was testing. But I reached out to Jess and confirmed they haven't been able to produce effluent, so they can't send anything to the golf course. This is all being monitored. We took a break for 2 weeks. We're slowly opening the wastewater treatment plant in to have that other disposal come back in to see how it does. I know that the wastewater treatment guys and Keith will be more than happy when the new aerator and bar spring come in. That will help with the process and breaking it down as well. And it will give that one aerator a little bit of a rest, and hopefully it doesn't break down till then. I've been reviewing I get weekly updates from them, and I've noticed there's been a huge increase in the number of new service taps for water and wastewater. I think a lot of it is new construction, new businesses coming in, but there's also a big push for replacement. Frontier Village, the mobile home park that's located on the north side, kind of in the middle, they've requested several taps to be installed and replaced to kind of single off the units instead of having combined sharing, which is wonderful that they're getting that cleaned up. Another item is that they are continue to focus on employee training and certification. This is really important as we've talked about employees and of course TCQ requirements, that every week, every other week, I constantly see where they're sending someone off for training or they're testing. They're staying on top of it to ensure that not only that those employees have the opportunity to move up in the system in the ladder, but also that our continuing education is up to date. They are required to meet minimum hours to keep that certification. So it is very important. In the next couple of weeks, we will have another employee going to test for their B for wastewater. That is exciting because that is the one item that has caught us every time with TCEQ. Hopefully we can get that resolved just in time for us to redo our permit and have it removed, but hopefully we get it done. Animal control. I had the pleasure of visiting with Jennifer and Courtney last week and all their wonderful new additions. They are at full capacity. They're a full house right now. They have currently 33 dogs and 17 cats. They are working with other entities and agencies on transporting both the cats and dogs. If you remember, we were very lucky to have a private plane come in and pick up animals to take to Austin. This is kind of the same idea as working with other big agencies, including Grand Companions, to relocate them, hoping that they'll get adopted. With that being said, Jennifer and her staff would strongly encourage the public to spay and neuter your pets and to properly restrain them. A lot of times pets will get off that leash. They'll find that one hole in your fence and they will make a beeline anywhere in the city. They unfortunately half the time end up at the shelter and they're not always picked back up by the owners. So we just want to encourage the owners and the public to spay and neuter and to properly restrain so that you can keep your animal. And they have some really cute puppies if anyone wants to adopt.
Thanks.
I've been told no multiple times. Public Works, Eddie and his crew are working on their paving and seal coat schedule along with Jarrett, get that back into full swing. And after this meeting, I hope everyone does a rain dance because I really want our pool to be prepared for the 22 pool season. We are definitely taking into consideration our water. We have not had rain for quite some time, so this is a large pool to fill. We don't want to put the strain on that system, but hopefully we'll get some rain and it won't hurt us too bad. But they are preparing the pool. They've cleaned it out. They're getting it painted, getting the restrooms cleaned up and all that, so that in Memorial Weekend, we can be full swing and ready to go. For administration and finance, the executive assistant that was hired is currently working on establishing a formal written policy for publishing and procurement, purchasing, and capital assets. If you recall in our audit, for years, our purchasing always kind of is a management point. The city tries really hard to make sure we mark every checks and balance off on that list. We've not had formal written policies, and so this is a big push, specifically coming from me, but it will benefit the city, especially when it comes to auditing, when it comes to grant opportunities and outside funding. It shows that we're trying to meet all of the requirements laid out by grants at the federal level, at the state level, and then all of those laws. We're basically taking our procedures and putting them in writing. We're not trying to rewrite the wheel here or do anything like that. We're just trying to formalize it so that when a department head or a new employee comes in, they kind of understand the process. It also allows for understanding of transferring assets, of auctions, how do we dispose of things, what if something breaks, get away from the hoarding a little bit. We all like to keep that one thing that, oh, but we can reuse it, we can use it down the line. We're notorious in this building for office supplies. We reuse manila envelopes until they literally are falling apart. But this is gonna try to help with that. On the capital asset side, it will actually outline what an asset is, what the levels for the asset are, and then the expectations of maintenance, and if we transfer them, if we sell them, and monitoring those items. We have been working really hard with the city ordinance updates and changes based on all the conversations with council. These are some pretty big undertakings. I know Gio and I will be up here some nights and be like, oh my God, where do we start? We've had a lot of great input from several of the council members, especially with the boards and commissions. Because the way we handle our ordinances and the specifics of outlining them and putting them in red and yellow and distinguishing the difference, it's taken a little bit more than we anticipated. And in every meeting, it's a new one. You know, we've talked about the signs for elections, we've talked about boards and commissions, of course, utilities. So we're kind of hitting a little bit for each one. I know as soon as we get some of these policies completed, we'll move the executive assistant to help them with those as well. Budget preparation. This is probably the best time of year as a council member. I will get to see your beautiful faces every week. We are starting the budget process. We started in January with departments to try to just ease them into it. It's been hard, I know, as a department person from the past and moving into the city manager role. Is prior, we don't really want your input, but we want your input. And I'm more like, well, I want all your input. I don't want to develop your budget for you. Every city manager has done it slightly differently. This year, I'm really full hands-on. I want the discussion, I want the participation, and I don't want to speak on behalf of every department. I think departments should speak on behalf of themselves. They know what's best for their employees, and they know what's best for their departments and the projects they'd like to complete for the city. Another item we've been working on is the budget amendments for this year. You'll notice in the financial report, there's several line items that exceed what was originally allocated. I did openly state in October that we did not budget correctly for the leased vehicles, for water, and for ACO. We do have a way to amend the budget to cover those expenses, and of course, I've made little notes to ourselves to ensure we get them for this upcoming fiscal year. There are a few other line items, some contractual work. Roy Mendoza is our contracted building official, so he'll be moving part of what we pay him contract from the actual salary line item into the budgeted contract line item. We have some of those also within the streets department. It's just cleaning it up. It's moving it from one line item to another. It's not changing the overall budget itself. We're not adding or subtracting money from it. But because it does deal with moving funds from salaries, our city charter does require that be a budget amendment approved by council. So you'll see that coming before council shortly. And then this is Gio's favorite time of year. He has been diligently working on elections. I think his first year where the state decided to change all the requirements and how things are done is the best opportunity for him. He has had to work a lot really with the posting, making sure everything gets done correctly, notifications. The biggest change this year is the ballots by mail. I think this has been hard for a lot of those in the public to maybe understand. One thing that has definitely changed is when you have a ballot by mail, in order for the city, the county, the school district to verify it, we have to have an identifying factor, which is usually the last four of your social security or your driver's license. If this can't be validated, then we will give you a call and say, hey, can you come in and we can personally validate your mail-in ballot. It is a little bit more work on the public side, but we want the public to understand it's, these are state issued requirements. We're asking that you put both. That way, if we can't confirm one, we can confirm the other one. A lot of this information is also obtained from when you actually register to vote. So if your driver's license number has changed in the past 10 years, we may not be able to validate it if it's not what you filed to become a registered voter. So those are some pretty big changes. The city auction, a huge shout out to everyone who participated, the police department, city admin, the sheriff. I now know he's a great auctioneer. This auction was a combination of both the abandoned vehicles. These are the vehicles the police department basically confiscates or get abandoned, left on the side of the road. They pick them up, and city-owned vehicles. There were 32 abandoned vehicles, 11 city-owned vehicles, and every single one of them was sold, even if they didn't have wheels. That was impressive. We were very fortunate to have a company out of El Paso that is a salvage company. They took full advantage of this. They made a killing. They purchased a lot of vehicles. It was fun to watch people drive off in the vehicles because a lot of them ran. So it was kind of cool to see these vehicles leaving without having to be towed out. The city spent about $4,280.50 in advertising. This is a little bit more than we typically have spent in the past, but we really wanted to focus on areas of Texas that we could bring people in. The prior auction, we sold 2 vehicles. So what was left over got moved to this one. This is being paid through the general fund, and then of course through the abandoned vehicle fund. I believe the highest vehicle that was sold was $3,600. Like I said, they jumped in it and drove it right out of the lot. And the lowest was $100. That's the one with no tires. So it was a fast event. We had it open to the public at 8 and we were done by 12:15. So
Yes.
it was great. This is a little extra revenue coming into the city. Dependent on who owned the vehicle, for the city owned vehicles, it would have been deposited into the general fund. We did auction off one gas department, which means that money goes into the gas department, which is a separate fund. And then the remaining would go into the abandoned vehicles.
And who gets that? The PD?
The police department. It's their fund. Halfway through the year, end of March 31st, we're 6 months in. March is a very important time frame when it comes to looking at the budget. It kind of gives us an idea of where we're at and where we're going and things that we need to focus on. The general fund, we are at the end of our property tax. Moving forward, most of the revenue coming in will be from sales tax. We're at 3.5 million, or roughly 56% of the budget, which is a good marking point for being halfway through the year. And then our expenditures are about 2.1 million, or 35%. So the expenditures on the general fund, it's important to understand that most of what we do that has a high cost to it is during the summer. This is full-blown maintenance of your parks. This is your seal coating, your paving. This is the pool. all the upkeep, all of these expenses will start to come in the next 6 months. So it's kind of important to see, oh, but we're doing so well, we're, you know, so much ahead of the game, but our expenses hit hard this upcoming 6 months. So it's important to kind of understand and we start evaluating. This is also where we start looking at from the budget for the next fiscal year as well. Our utility department revenues are at about 2.4 million or 41% of the budget. And expenditures are about 2 million at 36% of the budget. So they're right in line. With it being so dry, we do kind of foresee that the water bills will slightly increase because people will start using more water, especially if they took advantage of Morrison True Value's plant sale. You don't want to kill them all. So we foresee people watering their yards, their plants, because it is so dry and hot. Above ground pools, kiddie pools constantly being filled up. So these are things we do take in consideration when we go into the summer months. For the airport fund, roughly they're at 434,000 or 66% in revenue, and their expenses are at 449,000 or 69% in expenditures. This is the one fund that I'm constantly bringing up that it has to be monitored. It has to be kind of looked at. We do have an item on the action side for some paving for a taxiway. These are expenditures that aren't necessarily unforeseen, but aren't planned for properly. We do have some room. We have not been invoiced for the 10% for the lighting system construction side for the airport, and that is $95,000. TxDOT Aviation has kind of pushed things back because they're waiting for the federal side of the money to come down before they move forward with the state side. So this may be one of those items that if it doesn't hit this fiscal year, it will hit the beginning of next fiscal year. So we do monitor that. We do have a new airport planner with TxDOT Aviation who will be coming down to visit with me and able to stay on top of it. Are they moving it to the next fiscal year? Are they moving it to the next? Most of their projects, they're one-time huge expenses. This was the first load of Jet A that the airport got. That is now over $6. We have not had complaints, but that's expensive, especially when you're flying at $6, over $6 a gallon. So these are things that we do take into consideration. For your hotel tax fund, they're at roughly 267,000 in income, which is 30%, and their expenditures are at 400,000, which is about 46%. I do want to put a clip note here. Council did approve using fund balance to cover the cost of the improvements to the visitor center. So even though their income seems kind of low, the 200,000 plus that was set aside from fund balance is actually incorporated in those current expenses because the project is being completed. And if you haven't had the opportunity to stop by, the bathrooms are up and running, the pavilion's completed. They've already had a few events out there. It's coming along nicely. And of course, as you see new and well constructed, you walk in and see the older side of the building. So there are going to be some CIPs for additional improvements moving down the road. The gas utility fund is roughly 1.2 million, or 61% of the revenue, and their expenses are at 873,000, roughly 43%. The most, or their big expenses coming up will include the DEMP project, where they are required by law to replace so many lines of poly with, or no, so many lines of steel with poly. Of course, the winter months, they don't tend to get out there and start, disconnecting and reconnecting. They do wait till the summer months when the usage is lower. The interest in sinking, we are at 144,000 or 97% of the revenue that's been budgeted, and the expenses are at 92%, roughly 137,000. We have made most of our debt payments. Our next go around will be in August, end of August, beginning of September. We have been very fortunate. This year, we will have paid off another debt bond, the 2012 series that was issued by the Texas Water Development Board for the wastewater treatment plant. So that's another one that's off our checklist. So in the past 2 years, we have paid off the 03, we've paid off the 2012, and we've paid off the pumper truck. So these are all three big debts that the city's been carrying for some time that we are now done with. So those are very good and exciting news. Enclosed is the actual line item breakdown of everything, so that if you have questions or concerns, don't hesitate. My last little collection of slides is on our elections. The city, the school district, and the county all have elections going on. We do encourage the residents to get out and vote. Early voting for the city of Alpine is April 25th through May 3rd, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. here in the city council chambers. Election day is Saturday, May 7th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. also in the council chambers. The Alpine Independent School District, their early voting is also April 25th through May 3rd, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the Alpine Civic Center. So they're just right next door. So if you want to vote here and then hop on over, it'd be great. Election day being Saturday, May 7th, 2022 at 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. in the Alpine Civic Center. Brewster County is slightly different on their election day. Their early voting is April 25th through May 3rd, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Judge Val Clark Beard Complex, which is right across the street from the courthouse. Their election day is Saturday, May 7th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And for their polling locations, we ask that you visit the brewstercountystx.com/vote. Their polling is by their different precincts. Precinct 4 will be here at the council chambers, but the other precincts will be at the designated areas. So they are slightly different. And that was the last slide for this portion. If you have any questions, concerns, comments.
Yeah, I got a question. You mentioned the water usage, and we're in a drought. At what levels are our water wells?
That is a great question. And I say that because Keith is right there.
Oh, good.
I don't get the details. I get the, well, I know that they've been monitoring each of the wells on a regular basis to ensure that they don't drop below certain levels. They have asked the Parks Department to cut back on watering. I believe they've reached out to both of the schools, the college and the AISD on watering. I don't know, Keith probably doesn't have it off the top of his head, but we can follow up with the exact levels. But we are more aware of it than usual because we haven't gotten the rain. We don't want to go into our drought contingency plan. The city does have one, which would require monitoring and enforcement. We're just hoping, like I said, if everyone can pray for some rain. But I can have Keith send us the numbers. He's actually having to do that for another request. So
Okay.
I can get you the exact levels.
Yeah.
But it's being monitored very closely. And it's a fear. We don't want them, they're not regenerating. I believe that's the word that you guys use, regenerating. So they're not increasing. They're just constantly going down.
I just wanted to, because people are asking me, are we going to be in a water shortage or whatever? And I says that. So right now, our wells are okay, but we can find out for sure.
We are definitely taking precautions, starting on the city side, like I said, with watering. If your parks look a little browner than usual, it's because we are trying to be very aware of it and reaching out to the other big entities that water as well. We're hoping not to get to that stage. If we do, it will be a very big public meeting. We will be falling under our drought contingency.
Okay, thank you.
But I still want our pool.
Yes, sir.
Just so I can be clear, what is that?
Excuse me, just to be clear, exactly what levels are you referring to? Do you want the well levels or do you want the output amount flow?
The water levels, well, both really.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mayor,
Okay.
and Council, one comment I might make, Megan has been doing a good job of paying off our city debt. But the Texas legislature has made it harder and harder for cities to put on debt. And so it's really one of those things, if we have a little piece of our tax rate that we use to pay down debt, it's better to try to keep that, because if we give it away by paying down debt and don't replace it, it's going to be hard to get it back in the future. So that's just something to think about as y'all go through the budget process.
Point.
Y'all ever want to have a big bond issue to pay a bunch of streets or do a sewer plant or something in the future, you might not be able to. If you paid all that stuff off, and just let the tax rate go down.
Okay. Anything else?
Unless you have any other questions.
Yep, that's it. We'll move on to the city staff updates. With Judge Jody Cole.
Good to see
Good
everyone.
to see you.
And we actually have a new clerk I'd like to introduce you to. This is Ms. Linda Stewart, and she had, today was her first day flying solo, and she did a great job.
Good
And so
deal.
if you have any questions or anything.
Put it on you, right?
Thank you. So today, I do want to say that this will be my last meeting with you, and Mayor Ramos, I'm so appreciative for you allowing me to complete your term with you. And the next mayor will appoint the new court, and it's a healthy, happy court. And I know the next judge will do a great job. And so one of the last things that I'd like to do with Mr. Ponton is clear our stale case docket. We have a huge caseload. We inherited it, and it's not unusual for communities to deal with this issue. And so consulting with Mr. Ponton, if Mr. Ponton files something called a City of Alpine's blanket motion to dismiss, what we will do is dismiss all cases that are older than 3 years old. And then I also will concurrently sign a standing order. And if Mr. Ponton's motion says that it would like to be a standing motion until revoked in writing, then it will happen automatically every year in February. According to the standing order, the clerk will have the authority to clear all cases that are older than 3 years old, so we won't have stale cases and all of our cases will be current.
Old cases like that, we have issues of speedy trial issues, and we have issues of statute of limitations issues, and just practical issues that people can't be found.
All right.
Are there any questions?
If it needed doing a long time ago.
Mhm.
Thank you
Okay.
for messing with it.
Well, very good. And I promised Chief Lasoya that I would mention, we are doing a warrant roundup on Thursday. Since we have publicly announced that, many people have called in and taken responsibility. And I ask, if your name is on there, you still have plenty of time. Call tomorrow and take care of your responsibility, and we won't see you on Thursday. But otherwise, we may see you on Thursday with assistance from Chief Lasoya. So thank you. And it was good seeing everyone.
Judge Cole, before you leave, I want to thank you for the job well done at municipal court. It was in disarray, and you put it back in order again. So again, I hate to see you leave, but I know you're moving on. But congratulations on your in the future, and thank you very much again for
My
what you've done.
pleasure.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Okay, we're going to move to public hearings. Public hearings to obtain the citizens' views and comments regarding the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-03-01. An ordinance amending chapter 90 taxation article 4 coin operated establishments in the regarding the initial special use permit. Is there anyone to comment from the public on this? No comments? Okay, we'll move on. Public hearings to obtain citizens' views and comments regarding an application for a special use permit for applicant Fong Hong Tu. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for the purpose of establishing a coin-operated machine business. This property in question is located at 1906 West Highway 90, the record property owner is Charles Sanders. Any comments on this? Okay. Item 3, public hearings to obtain the citizens' view and comments regarding an application for a special use permit for applicant Chai Toi Bo. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for the purpose of establishing a coin-operated machine business. This property in question is located at 2000 East Highway 90. The record property owner is Bamel Patel. Any comments on this? Okay. Public hearings to obtain the citizens' views and comments on short-term rentals use permit applicant at 601 North 8th Street. Property owners of record are Jeffrey and Gay Neal Ripple. Any comments on that? None? Okay, then we're going to go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. Minutes, financial reports, department written reports, board appointments, etc. Notice to the public. The following items are of routine administrative nature. The council has been furnished with background and support material on each item and it has been discussed at a previous meeting. All items will be acted upon by one vote without being discussed separately unless requested by council member, in which event the item or items will immediately be withdrawn for individual consideration in its normal sequence after items not requiring separate discussion have been acted upon. The remaining items will be adopted by one vote. City Secretary.
Tonight, we have 3 items on the consent agenda. First one is approval of April 5th, 2022 regular meeting minutes. Second, approval of short-term rental special use permit application for 601 North 8th Street. Property owners of record are Jeffrey and Gay Nell Ripple. And third, approval of second quarter investment report.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 8. Information or discussion items. City manager.
The first item is the fiscal year 2022-2023 budget. I wanted to take this opportunity and let me get my screen back up here to kind of go over the budget process. As mentioned, I wanted to take a different direction with this. I wanted to do things more in line with what I've learned over the past couple months and then visiting with other cities and just general research. Getting the departments more involved, getting the council more involved. And the first step was just a little education, in my opinion, just a little understanding. It is a 12-month process, in my opinion. As soon as it's approved, we start preparing for the next year. We have ups and downs, we have amendments, we have open discussions, we have emergencies that come up. The big part of the budget for what I've learned is really the plan. It's planning for the future, getting your citizens involved and understanding where the money's coming from and what it's going to. The first thing, a couple months back, I discussed kind of a tentative step 1, step 2. The departments have all been working towards this. So the next step was getting a budget calendar put together, and in your packets you have a tentative. And when I mean tentative is we know that throughout this next few months, people have vacations, we don't have quorums, things come up. Not all the information comes in that I can produce something to get back to council. And we also wanted to ensure that we tried to squeeze everything within people's time frames. We do have city council members who do work full time who aren't able to come during the day. So we want to make sure we had opportunities to include them. The past 4 months, the departments have all been working on their goals, the priorities, understanding reoccurring expenses, things that they've been tasked with, and they're learning and they're like, oh, wait a minute, we just signed a new contract for a copier. That's a reoccurring expense, something I need to think about. Tonight's meeting is to give you some information. We do have several new council members and it's for the public as well. Just kind of have a little bit of a discussion. The departments have a capital improvement plan deadline at the end of this month. This is providing all the information on what they foresee over the next several years. We are required by city charter to prepare this and present to council. Some of the items in our current CIP have actually been completed. So there will be a new section of that CIP that will have completed, these are big steps, these are big improvements, and I want not only the public to see it, but for the employees to have that recognition that we are moving slowly, but in a great direction. Council will be given another questionnaire. One of those, what are your priorities? What are your expectations? And to have that discussion. We will have a goals and priorities workshop in May, which I am requesting all the department heads to be there. They've done their due diligence to kind of indicate what they want. The last feedback from council was having that open discussion with what your priorities are, what their priorities are, and do they match? Are they completely different? And understanding, where we're at with that. Of course, then presenting the draft of the CIP. Another aspect of the budget is the hot funds. We actually open up the application process for those who are hosting events who want to use hot funds specifically for it. That's a whole nother process within the budget process. And then of course, budget workshops. You'll notice that the budget workshops are scheduled in June. This would be the June 7th and June 21st meeting. During this time frame, it's also reviewing our annual policies. We do have a finance policy. We have a budget policy. We have our investment policy. We have things that are set annually, like our utility fees. All that need to be reviewed as part of the budget process to move into the next fiscal year. We also have deadlines that have to be met, not only from within our own charter, but from the state requirements as well. And it's making sure that those are outlined. We do have to have the proposed budget filed with the city secretary. It does have to be a balanced budget, and there's multiple ways to balance it. The big controversy the last year is balancing it with the fund balance, which is acceptable as long as that's what's outlined and indicated in the budget. It's allowable. It's not something that the city always wants, but sometimes it's inevitable. We have to take that additional step because we don't have that revenue coming in. One-time revenues aren't beneficial to the city. One year we get that influx from a donation from Energy Transfer. 1 year is when it helps, but it doesn't help the remaining years. So it's understanding and having that discussion. And then the tax rate. It is really interesting. You have to propose and adopt your budget before you can adopt your tax rate. There are two very different approval processes, but are dependent on each other. You kind of want to know what your tax rate is going to be before you approve your budget, but the state really doesn't want you to do that. For all purposes, they use the word estimate a lot in the state requirements. Notices in the paper are different for the budget, your public hearings compared to your tax. There are different ways to approve and accept a tax rate. You can go with what they are now calling the no new revenue, which is basically what was prior called the effective tax rate. If you increase the tax rate, if you decrease the tax rate, all of them have very specific outline procedures with the state of Texas, including how you notify. It's down to if you have it in the paper one day, you can't propose or adopt until 14 days after the second. It's very specific. So our calendar kind of has to be very fluid in that if something happens, we have to have the time space to be able to either have another meeting, to have a called meeting, which is why you see everything at the very first meeting of September being completed. That gives us that extra meeting in September if something doesn't flow accordingly. It is a very long process and it's tedious. That's why I'm so glad we're going to spend so much time together. And it's getting the budget workshops and getting the public's information and reaching out to your constituents. We want all of that. We want to know things that we want to do and move forward with, which also leads up to one of the items that I would really like to see the city complete is to have a strategic plan. to have something in place that outlines the future of the city for not just 1 year, but for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So it doesn't matter who comes into office. It doesn't matter who sits at this chair. It's a plan put in place that you can budget according to. We will always have an emergency. We will always have something pop up. That is just the nature of our game. But it would be nice to know that we have funds set aside for that emergency, or it'd be nice to know that year 1, we're gonna do A, B, and C, year 2, we're gonna do A, B, and C, and have it outlined. I mean, it's not just our infrastructure, it's our economic development, it's our quality of life. It's every aspect of how the city functions. And in order to do that, the budget is a great place to start, and then develop into that strategic plan. It is something we can do in-house. It is something that we could hire a consultant to do, but it's definitely something that the city needs and has needed for quite some time. The other part, like I mentioned, is reviewing the policies, making sure that we stay up to date and follow them. The required publications. I did outline specifically where the state law, where our charter indicates it, our tax code. It's not all bundled up in one pretty location. There's not a Bible of a budget. There are several different resources to find the information. But I wanted council and the public to know that, we are looking at every part of this. When it comes to the state requirements, the budget officer, and I'm not going to try not to read all of it, but shall itemize the budget to allow as clear a comparison as practicable between expenditures included in the proposed budget and actual expenditures for the same or similar purpose made the preceding year. And what I wanted to kind of point out is the state does outline specifically what you have to have in your budget, and there are several of them. And our city charter goes into even more depth. When you get a proposed budget, it kind of looks like this. And I wanted to kind of explain so that everyone was aware. It's the same thing that you see within our packets that get posted on our website. You have your line item. Everything is very detailed. You have a description of what that line item covers, the original budget and the current budget. The difference between the original and the current is if there's a budget amendment or a line item transfer, that current budget will reflect those changes. So if you go off the original budget, it may be wrong. You may want to look at the current budget because we will be making some adjustments. Encumbered. These are the items that have been secured with a purchase order through the city of Alpine. This is items that we've said we are wanting to buy, but haven't been invoiced to purchase. Our year-to-date is everything that has been spent for each of these line items. Month-to-date shows you just that month, which this would be March. Our current balance is what's left. It shows you a usage in a percent. But the most important column, and I can't stress this enough, is the projected year end. If they continue to spend at the rate they're spending, this is where they will end their budget. This is the one that when we do a proposed budget, you'll have actual expenses from fiscal year 2021. You'll show the budget. You'll show what we've encumbered and spent for 6 months. If we try to go actual for the current fiscal year, your proposed budget will change every week. And I mean that because we cut checks every week. We have payroll bi-weekly. There's no number to fixate on to know where you're going because it's going to constantly be changing. So we look at the projected year end because this is going to have the long term. At the end of the year, if they continue to spend at this rate, this is where they should be. When you get the proposed budget, there's a few items that are a little off. And for example, the Parks Department, they have a line item called CIP. It's the Pueblo Nuevo Park and it's 75 grand. It's currently valued at 0. We haven't spent any of it. This line item was put in there because we have to set aside funds every year to be able to provide the matching that is required for this grant that the city applied and accepted for. In order to do that, we have to put something aside. So the money gets put aside typically towards the end of the year. We always want to ensure hiccups, emergencies. If the Parks Department was to have an emergency, we would be unfortunate and would have to reduce that line item to cover that emergency and then budget more the next year to be able to fulfill the matching amount. So when you look at the proposed budget, you'll see some of those actuals have zeros, but the projected year in will show a $75,000 expenditure because the city plans on expending it. One of the items brought up in the past has been some of the expenditures from the utilities over to the general fund. So the utilities, which includes water, gas, sanitation, airport, they all provide an administrative and a franchise fee. You'll notice the very first line item, administrative fee. They're currently at 50%, which means every month it's being applied over to the general fund. There are some of these line items that don't get applied until the end because we have to document accordingly. For example, roads. The street department does have a line item for road revenue that is primarily coming from, well, it's 100% coming from the water, wastewater, and gas. And we have to calculate and document as best as possible because we don't have a magical formula sheet anymore, what it costs. So every time all these taps get put in, the roads are cut. They have to be filled and corrected, or you have, prime example, Murphy Street. If you ever drive down it, I believe the last I counted was 23 taps, all new cuts from 20 to 30 years ago. Every time those are fixed, are patched, those are expenses that are incurred by the general fund that the water and gas and wastewater actually reimburse. So we have to take into consideration all of the new taps, all of the road cuts. Not all of them need road cuts, by the way. And then some of the patching. Are we constantly patching the same areas? And we also take in consideration the number of employees who've assisted with this. If we had a magical way of doing the square footage and this is what it actually costs, we definitely would. But we wait till the end of the year so we can encompass everything for that year. Sometimes it's not exactly what we budget. When we initially started adding that item into the utility sides, we anticipated $30,000, and actually it was more than that at the end of it. I brought up the fact that the utilities has all of these new taps coming in. All of those that require a road cut, that's an expense on the city general side, the street department. It does get eventually reimbursed from the utility side. It just has to be all documented. We don't want to just pull money for no reason. So when you look at your budget, it's going to show for the year to date as a 0 because we haven't come to the end of the year. But for the end of the year, it's going to show you as the projected, the full amount. So there is some offs on that. But it's understanding when you look at it, that projected year end is really what you want to look at when you're looking at the budget and how we're looking at next year. There are a million ways to do a budget, is what I'm learning. Some cities do zero base, which means they scratch all of this and they start from the ground up. Some do what is a build upon. So they build upon the current, they take into consideration new projects, employees, things that need to be completed, tasks, and they build upon their current budget. Some average, they'll take several years, they'll average out that, and that's what they propose. There's performance-based budgeting, which basically has by project, what do you want to accomplish for the year? What are your priorities? And then you break it down, and that's how you budget, you know, your materials, your employees, incidentals, things like that. So it's really important when we go through the budget process to understand that the numbers aren't going to be constantly changing because it does create some confusion. But that projected year end is very important. And so when you get the proposed budget, you'll have similar columns, except for it will be actual for the prior couple years, and then it'll be the current, it'll be a year to date, and then the projected. And then you'll have what we always like to say is the wish list. It's the line proposals from all of the departments. Some of them really need new employees. Some of them need new equipment. So that's where we start having that budget discussion during the workshops. So it's a really important piece of paper there. Going back to the state requirements, one of the things I noticed is the outstanding obligations of the municipality. And reviewing prior budgets and looking at nationally recognized budgets, there's a section that usually includes what is our debt. We put a little something in there. We don't fully go into where we're at. Are we at 9 million? Are we at 6 million? So one of the things I want to ensure that we include is a much clearer understanding of what our debt obligations are. So not only can the residents see what we're obligated to pay and why your tax rate has that INS portion, but also for council to make decisions moving forward is maybe it is time to go out for debt. Maybe it is time that we apply and start working on our infrastructure. These are all things that you guys need to be aware of. The cash on hand and to which funds. The city actually has multiple operating accounts. Some of them are discretionary by state statute. We have what is called the court security fund. That is money specifically put aside as required by the state of Texas, but it can't be managed by council. The state actually requires it to be only used for court security and things to benefit the court. Some of the technology. You have your municipal court technology fund. You have your abandoned vehicle fund with the police department. You have your pet fed when items are seized and the city gets a portion of it. These are all revenue coming in specifically for certain things that the public and the council should be made aware of. It's not things that we can necessarily budget and we can't really dip into to pull over to someone else because there are very strict requirements to it. And I don't think any of us want to go that direction. But it's good to know. We also have a health fund that was set up years ago. It wasn't properly managed initially. Unfortunately, you had a switch over in 2013 and it started to be managed correctly. The city used to be considered partially self-funded, which means we charged ourselves to pay the claims for our employees. So we paid an administrative fee to a third party, and then we paid the claims directly. So back in 2013, it was a big deal when you had zero money in it and you had claims coming in the 200, 300,000 range. Over the years, the city successfully kept putting money aside like they should have from the beginning. We monitored our claims. We ensured that we had a very preventative health plan so that employees took care of themselves. We didn't want that $1 million claim. We had a stop loss, but when people keep hitting the stop loss, it's a lot of money coming out. That fund still exists today and it's dedicated towards health insurance for the employees. It has a little over 400,000 in it. We're currently only using it for our task, which is our HRA, which is our card that we provide our employees to be able to go buy prescriptions, over-the-counter medicines, doctor visits, and then the premium for that. Otherwise, that is a fund that can be utilized towards health insurance, or if the city chose at some point down the road, maybe to reallocate it. I think it's important that the city is address it because it is money that is sitting there. And if the city wanted to do more from the employee side with health insurance, this is an opportunity to do it, but it's not long-term. The money does disappear fast. We do, like I said, we have the task card, but month after month and month, there's no money going into it anymore. It's just sitting there and we're pulling from it. But understanding all of our funds and all of the sources that the money's coming from. Of course, we have to have the estimated revenue available to cover the proposed tax or proposed budget, and then the estimated tax rate. Estimated is the big word for the state of Texas. The city charter is much more specific. It kind of outlines what your budget should look like. You should have the budget message. It should include kind of like where we're at with our finances, important features of the budget, major changes, our financial policies, expenditures, revenues. This is really important as we are still under the pandemic. When we went from 19 to 20, 20 to 21, it's understanding what those big changes were. It should summarize the debt position and any other material that the manager deems desirable. It's important that this is the story. This is what we're telling the public that the money is going to be used for, and we should just lay it all out there. It should provide the complete financial plan of the city, all funds, activities for ensuring the fiscal year. Of course, except as required by law or this charter, shall be in such form as the manager seems desirable. Then there's the whole organization of the budget, breaking it down. We do break it down by line item. It is very detailed. You will start to see the budget grow. It used to be 60 pages, and it went to 70 pages, and it's going to go to 80. It's going to get up there because you want all this information in there. Of course, the taxes, the comparative figures for actual and estimated income and expenditures of the current fiscal year, just real detailed, and of course, any other items required by state law. It should have this section separated. Your revenue is separate from your expenditures, your capital expenditures, any anticipated net surplus. That was the big thing this past fiscal year. We don't have a net surplus. We were using our surplus to balance. So it's calling that out and making it very clear. This is the big one, is the subsidiary budgets for each enterprise. This is your water, your wastewater, your airport, your gas, your hot, those are all outlined separately. And then of course, your total proposed expenditure shall not exceed the total estimated income. It has to be a balanced budget. So I wanted you to give you an intro as we're moving forward, kind of to understand that there's a lot that goes into this, and we want to ensure that we encompass all of it. Departments are working, getting, like I said, their priorities done. We'll have that discussion, and then we'll start developing the actual budget itself. The first draft or first workshop, the budget will be proposed off of our current tax rate, as if we're not going to see any new income coming in. And this is where it's really hard. We're growing, we're not stagnant, we're trying our best, and you have departments and you need more staff. The departments will be directed tomorrow in our budget discussion about basically providing that justification. The state does not make it easier either. There are rules and regulations and mandates that get passed down that require us to take extra steps. I mean, Geo is a prime example with the elections. The extra steps that have to be taken with the mail-in ballots. It's time consuming. And understanding as we look at the budget and we look at personnel, do we need more staffing? What services do we want to provide? What services do we want to take a step back from? And it's very unique. The general fund operates completely different than your water, your wastewater, your sanitation, your gas department, your hot funds. Their source of revenue is all different. So it's understanding we want a brand new wastewater treatment plant. The effects on that is going to be the fees we charge for our water and wastewater. And it's understanding those aspects when we look at the budget. And we've got a couple of things up our sleeves that we want to definitely discuss at the next meeting. Definite grant opportunities. Sat down with Marcy, who is here. We really want to take your priorities and apply it to grant funding. We don't want to kind of do the free for all, which we've done for years, because it's great. There's so many opportunities out there. But we want to take that step back and really focus on our priorities for the city. And I know our infrastructure is big. Economic development is huge. Well, you could get more in taxes if you brought more property or businesses in, and that's fine. And I'd love every business owner to want to work in Alpine and open up a business. But I want to ensure that when they flush their toilet, it's not going to overflow. They're not going to have water issues. They're not going to have septic or sewer issues. When they drive down, the road, if you notice, I've mentioned it, locals kind of go around the potholes and the manholes, but having that, discussion first, which will lead into the economic development. We want to encourage the city, like I said, it's not stagnant, we are growing. But we just want to ensure that when we welcome people in, that we're not, come on in, but just so you know, which is also important in the budget process. And every meeting moving forward, we're gonna have more and more of this coming out, and I welcome all of you guys to step by the office and let's discuss and prioritize, because I think it is really important.
Thank you very much.
Was that budget 101?
It was a lot longer. I just really want in the
That was a
public.
short version, thanks.
I
Thanks,
just really want the public and the council to know that there really is a lot that goes into this. And last year was very rushed and it was unfortunate, but we are holding strong and we're doing well. I just want, as we move into this year, that the council understands that there's a lot of players in this, and it's your citizens, it's your department heads, your directors. And when we have that final product, I'm hoping we work towards the national recognition. That's not always been something that prior people have wanted, but it is something that I feel important, because it shows that the public, that one, we're very transparent and we're showing where all the money's going and coming from. But it's a seal on our website that says we have been nationally recognized by the Government Finance Officers Association. It's a big deal in our world. And it takes all of us to do it. It's not just something I can throw together in a slideshow and hope to win.
One would think that our good city manager likes finance.
You think?
Yeah, I think so.
I've never been on this side of it. I've always just put the numbers in a spreadsheet. I've never actually developed and gotten to know that there's a lot of requirements to it.
I think that was a compliment.
I know.
Yeah.
It's exciting to me.
The number cruncher.
And the next item, this one will be super fast. Discuss the proposed emergency medical services contract. I submitted a draft copy. It's one of, I think, 2 drafts ago, by the way. Judge Cano, myself, Greg Kennington, JD have all been participating on a regular basis, discussing the contract itself. Rod has taken all of our suggestions and gone back and reformatted, changed, added, deleted. We just had a meeting this Monday in regards to additional changes. Greg had the opportunity to with Lee from Emergent. Their feedback was very simple. Just a few little minor changes that they'd like, a little bit of extra clarification. They did ask that we extend the contract a little bit longer, which all of us are on board with. It is hard to bring in a company for 1.5 years, 2 years and say bye. They're investing a lot in our community, so we wanted to work with them on that. So Rod is currently working on a final draft version that will go back before the county. The county has their outside attorney, which is Sarah Leone, who's also reviewing it. We're looking at a 2-year contract with a 1-year renewal option, so it'd be 5 years altogether. We also put in a stipulation with an increase every year of no more than 8%. That is how we currently operated with the prior vendor. We all felt that it was in line and it could be justified. There's a lot of added features to this contract that allows for the county and the city to have information. Instead of a short report coming up here and saying, this is how many calls we had, this is in the city, this is in the county. We're actually asking them for the type of calls, the type of billing, just it's more detailed, having that information to determine what's the best for the city of Alpine. What are our higher risks? One of the aspects of the contract is the community education side. And if we know that we have a higher population with diabetes or heart issues, then maybe our education coming from them changes to that type of demographic so that we can help the public. Also being able to know where they're at with their equipment, making sure that they're up to date. Making sure that it works, that they can properly respond to a call. They will be utilizing the county fire facility for 2 of the ambulances to be housed. So there were some items we added in with there.
But not the people? Just the equipment.
Just the equipment, and not even their inventory. They're going to keep that somewhere else. I mean, it could be short term. They're really developing and trying to run full throttle on this one. They've reached out to People at the airport to look at keeping a plane here, not part of our contract, but a service they want to include and provide for the city. They've also, we did have some stipulations on where the employees would live. We did remove those. In visiting with other EMTs and paramedics, they rotate. They don't work in one location. You've got Pecos people working in Odessa, working in Fort Stockton. So we wanted to be able to ensure that we had a good source of employees and didn't regulate it to having to be here 24/7. But they have to be manned 24/7, which was important. Of course, hiring local is our priority. We did have stipulations in regards to some of the additional funds that they can receive through our JRAC to utilize it with the city of Alpine and Brewster County for training and education. And then in an emergency, they would petition the city and the county to use it if, say, they had an ambulance go down and they needed to pull some of that for that. Of course, it outlines the insurance side of it, compensation. There's just a lot more in this contract than we've had prior. And the key thing that I know people keep asking, at least I've had a few, it is one contract for both entities. It's not a county contract and then a city contract, which is what we've had in the past. It is one solid contract that has those clauses in there that if something comes up, we both get out of it. We don't foresee one dropping it over the other. There's a joint effort and it's really important. And it's been brought up many times. We're working together and that doesn't always happen. So it's really good for like Judge Cano, and I know he's leaving at the end of the year, but to start establishing that, because as we look at it, and Judy has pointed this out multiple times, we're taxing the same group of people. And you know, if the city's taxing you and then the county's taxing you, and it's going into the same contract, we might as well have the same contract together to try to regulate that. You don't have the final version yet. As of Monday, we had some more input and some more changes. Rod will provide another draft, which I will forward to council as well. The Terlingua EMS contract ends April 30th. We will have to have a called meeting. The 26th is what we're looking at in order to approve this contract. You'll have the draft hopefully tomorrow so that you have an extended amount of time to review it, ask questions, and then Emergent will also have a copy of it as well. We do ask in the contract for some very specific items, professionalism, customer surveys, reporting. It's pretty well detailed and outlined, but I really wanted to get that out there as we're coming to the end of the contract so that you weren't kind of like, why are we meeting? It has been a back and forth 2 to 3 times a week. So I think the end product is going to benefit the city as a whole and the county.
Now, the coverage area, is it still going to be the same as what the Scudders had, more or less, Marathon, Elephant Mountain this way?
Yes, so there is a map that will be attached as Exhibit B. It has basically, it's everything above the ESD 1. So South Brewster County was considered Emergency Service District 1. It's everything above that. So basically where they come to an end, they would pick up. So it goes all the way up to the Reeves County, no, Pecos County. And then all the way over to Sanderson, and then of course all the way to the Presidio. It's a huge section, but they're on board. Like I said, they've been very full throttle trying to secure anything and everything, housing, employees. Like I said, the plane, they're really excited. And it's a huge, huge area.
Okay. Very good. Any questions?
Questions?
Okay, let's move forward then. We'll go to item number 9, action items to be accompanied by a brief statement of facts, including where funds are coming from. If applicable, action items are limited to 10 per meeting. City manager.
Accept evaluation of generators for utility department emergencies performed by Jacob and Martin Engineers.
Okay, I'll need a motion for that, please.
I'll make a motion to accept the evaluation for generators.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion?
I do want to point out that we do have the engineers present. Their main focus is the wastewater treatment plant. But this item is equally as important because it's going to tie into another action item for our grant opportunity for generators. This is something that was discussed prior, as indicated in the outline of the information provided. We're asking for the acceptance because we want to be able to say that council has approved this evaluation and we want to move forward and use this for grant opportunities. So
Okay,
if you do have questions, we do have the engineers present.
so would you like to step up to the podium?
Don't worry, they'll be good questions.
Yeah.
You have any questions about the evaluation?
This is
Yeah.
what we didn't have during the big freeze.
Right.
Correct. We rent or leased rented from another city.
Right. I remember hearing that.
So, going forward, then we'll have generators available now in case we ever have another emergency, and part will be at the Civic Center, correct?
Not under this
Well,
agreement.
not this one, but
So we're
the
working on that.
wastewater and some of the wells, correct?
So this is covering the water, it's covering the wells and some of the lift stations, I believe.
That's correct.
And the reason we narrowed down the focus specifically because the grant allows us to target this, but also Senate Bill 3 requires that we have an emergency preparedness plan that does keep our system running at 20 PSI. If we had not had those generators during that freeze, we would have been on a boil notice. So this is a very important piece to complying with the state mandated requirements and also to provide that service back to our citizens.
What were your recommendations at the wastewater treatment?
At the wastewater treatment
Mhm.
plant or
There's not generators. on
Oh, there's
this,
not, but-
No, they have one.
They have one
there's
already,
already a
okay.
generator at the wastewater.
Yeah.
treatment plant. That was the only place I think y'all did have a generator, other than a mobile generator, trailer mounted generator that y'all used at different well fields.
Mhm.
So we did a complete evaluation determining, where you could put in fixed generators to get you through an event such as the freeze of 2021.
Mhm.
And it was mandated, like Megan said, the Senate Bill 3, as a result of that event, they required every municipality, every public water supply to evaluate their system and determine where you need backup power or some other means to get through an event such as that. That's what really spawned the evaluation and the city going after the grant money.
On your generators, they're gonna be stationary or they're gonna be mobile?
So we actually laid out the different alternatives for the city. I don't know if y'all chosen an alternative yet, but there's pros and cons to each one. Obviously, the fixed generators are cheaper, and they're fixed at a site, so you don't have to worry about moving a generator out there. It's already there. And ideally, you put it on an automatic switchover, so if you lose power, it automatically comes on. Of course, you have wells, you have well fields, so there's cost by putting a generator at every well. So it may be more advantageous to get a trailer mounted or a mobile generator for each well field where you can move from well to well. Because you get into a freeze like we had, you don't know which wells are going to be operational at that point. You may have a well down at that time that's not working. Or its capacity may have replenished over time. So you'd like to be able to maybe have a generator that you can move from well to well. And we laid out all those different alternatives in the evaluation and we'll discuss that with the administration and the public works to see which route they want to go.
Now, on these generators, will they be self-tested themselves, or do they have to be manually tested periodically?
You can set it up both ways. You can set it up where it comes on every, once a week for 2 hours, or once a month for a few hours. That's one way you can keep it, running efficiently and testing, automatic testing. But also, you want to put it on a maintenance program. You want to have somebody come out and check that generator at least once a year that's qualified to service generators.
So in the past, Warren Cat has had an agreement with the city of Alpine. I don't know if it's still current, for the wastewater treatment plant, because we have gotten in some sticky binds where they come out twice a year to ensure that it's properly maintained. The one thing that maintenance that we needed to step up our game on was putting oil in it. So having them come out ensures that the oil is adequate. So we did in the past have an agreement, and moving forward, if whichever direction we go, we would have an agreement to ensure that they're properly maintained, so that if we had an incident, we're not struggling.
And that's one thing that, you know, the city lacked in previous years. We weren't being proactive with these wells. And we were just lucky in 21 when we had to freeze that, you know, we were able to rent generators and whatnot. But if not, like Megan said, you know, we would have been in the pickles. But now we're, you know, we're moving forward. We're ensuring the public's going to be safe and that our wells are up and running. Also our waste treatment plant. So these are some of the new things that our new administration is moving forward on. And it's been long overdue, and hopefully we'll continue to move in that direction. Thank you, sir.
I apologize. I did not introduce myself. Kurt Harrow, Jacob and Martin. I know Megan, I know Keith and Jess, but I don't get to see the council very often, so.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Because it's way over my head.
So, Kurt Harrow, Jacob and Martin, I come out of Abilene is where our office is. We got offices in Weatherford and Lubbock as well, but that's where I came out of. So sorry, I apologize. For not
Okay, not a problem. Just keep us running, okay? Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. City manager.
Except the wastewater treatment plant evaluation performed by Jacob and Martin engineers.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the wastewater treatment plan evaluation.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
So this is the big one. This is the one that I've been bringing up to you since basically June of last year. This was step one that needed to be done. Where are we at? What needs to be done? How can we prioritize? Can we do one side of it over another side? This also gave you the estimated cost. And so that everyone is aware, to get the wastewater treatment plant back to where it needs to be today, 4.6 million. Those are estimated costs, and that does not take into consideration the cost of materials next year or the year after or the year after that. But we needed to know. You've heard me mention the Band-Aids. We have Band-Aid for 10 years, if not longer. TCEQ has us on their list. We have done our best to work with them and explain, you know, we're stuck. Bringing in Jacob and Martin and doing step one. What do we need to do? What do we need to address? Gives us that opportunity to look at funding, to give us the opportunity to be like, is this one of those big projects that we go out for a grant, that we go out for a loan, that we take a bond? But it gets us back into where we need to be, to have that economic development, to have those businesses come in and be able to do what they need to do. It was a big undertaking, I think. Kurt will probably say otherwise, but it gave us a lot of options. It gives us kind of, you don't have to start with step one, you could probably start with step 7, but it outlines all of the different steps. This will also be used with our PIF project, which Jacob and Martin Engineering Company did apply on our behalf. This was just the foot in the door. This was just we're gonna throw our name in the hat and then see if they're interested. Because of what has been going on with the city of Alpine, we have a really good chance of getting this funding. I have Marcy, poor thing, on a regular basis. Where are we at with the infrastructure? Where's the money coming from? Why haven't we been able to? We aren't that big city that's going to get a direct deposit from the government. We are the ones who have to go through the state. But the state it's that trickle down effect, and then the state has this money coming in. We are a very small community in West Texas. We have a great chance here, and we wanted to make sure we had the documentation to take the chance. One of the things as we apply for grants, that the hardest part for us is we don't have the data. We don't have the step one. We don't have the documentation to say we want to do this. And now we're doing that. So Kurt is here to answer questions and to explain. This is an estimated $4.6 million project. I can guarantee you it will be in our CIP, very outlined, and I can guarantee it will be part of the budget process. We do need to take a handle on this and get, I like to get TCQ off our back, because we are on the list.
Have you prioritized the needs that are in here as to what is most important and should be addressed,
Yes, sir.
like now? And
Yes, sir. You want to keep.
because I see in here just different, one's 65,000, one's 450,000, and obviously to me, the 65 is a lot less expensive to do than the 460.
So he actually has a presentation.
Okay,
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead and do the presentation.
go
Maybe
for
I
it.
can answer some of your questions, but if you have more, I'm here all night.
We're just gonna start with the questions first.
So, again, thank you all for letting me come tonight. I know this is what everybody's been waiting for tonight, is to talk about wastewater and your wastewater treatment plant, where the sewer and the poop water goes. But unless you've had the privilege to go in.
go by the one in Imperial. Have you been to the one in Imperial?
No,
It's just a flood zone south of town.
yeah, and there's, there's
I think Marfa used to be the same way too.
So,
pretty yucky water running through basins that may make you throw up if you don't have a tough stomach. So it's not a place you want to hang out. But honestly, at the end of it, there's an effluent coming out of the plant that is almost drinkable, believe it or not. A little bit more disinfectant, but it's almost drinkable coming out of the plant. So unless you're a geeked up engineer or an operator that is really passionate about wastewater, it's just not a place you like to hang out. But that is what I'm going to talk about tonight. And usually it's not talked about at a council meeting unless one, TCQ's on your back, or the plant just needs to be rehabbed. It's getting old. So that's kind of like Megan said, that's kind of where we were brought in to help you guys out and evaluate the whole plant and come up with a plan for making improvements out there. So this was our scope of work that we gave the city. Basically, population projections, historical waste flows. That's not exciting information to look at, but it's a basis for any type of planning. So we started with some population and treatment flow projections. We analyzed the city's historical, the water quality coming out of the plant. We evaluated each individual component of the wastewater treatment plant. We looked at every component, and I'm going to talk briefly about every component tonight. We took a very high level look at the electrical system out at the wastewater treatment plant. And then we came up with the improvements, what needs to be done out there, and then we prioritized those improvements, which we'll look at. And finally, we came up with an opinion of probable cost, which Megan kind of already stole my thunder there, $4.6 million. It was $4.6 million a month ago. As you can imagine, with inflation, it's probably already gone up. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Just going to quickly go over population projections. The yellow is the census data from 2000, 2010, and 2020. As you can see, the city is growing slowly. The projections are taken from the Texas Water Development Board, which is kind of the industry standard when you're looking at water and wastewater. That's usually who we go to for projection of population. And again, they show a kind of a steady growth over the next 50 years. All right, historical projected wastewater treatment plant effluent flows. This is the flow that actually leaves the plant, comes into the plant and leaves the plant. You can see from about 2015 through 2020, which is the first column after the dates, the flow coming into the plant has been pretty steady. This is annual average flow. So we basically take the total flow over the year, divided by 365 days. That's what this number is. So it's averaged around 0.4 to 0.45 million gallons. That's million gallons per day, by the way. The units are not on there, but it's a million gallons per day. 2020, I have that highlighted because it's in the data was not great, and it's a bit of an anomaly. It's a little higher than it has been. We showed it to be about 0.5 million gallons per day. But we did use that number projecting forward. So if you look down after that, at the bottom, in the 2030 through 2070, we projected the flow to generally increase as population increases. So it's a modest increase. I do want to direct your attention to the last two columns, though. There's a 1.48 MGD column and a 0.9 MGD column. That's going to be very important as we go forward talking about your plant. The 1.48 million gallons per day, that is your current permitted flow that you are allowed. That's the max annual average flow that you're allowed to put into your plant. The 0.9 is obviously significantly less, and that's what we are recommending you look at reducing to as a permitted flow. And as you can see, you're well below that 1.48 million gallons per day. I mean, you don't even reach 30% of that hardly currently. And we're projected for you to not reach, but maybe 35% of that permitted flow. So you've got a lot of excess permitted capacity in the plant. If we were to drop it to 0.9, you'd still be well below that permitted flow. And I'm going to talk more about that, but I wanted to point that out on this slide. All right, the next slide is the TCEQ permit. Every wastewater treatment plant in the state has a TCEQ permit, and you have to renew that permit every 3 to 5 years. Y'all's is actually every 3 years. We just renewed it for you about a year ago. The key elements in that permit are the flow, which I mentioned, which is 1.48 million gallons per day. And the other key element is the effluent water quality that leaves the plant. That's what TCEQ, that's what the permit, that's the main things that they look at as far as staying in compliance at your treatment plant. This slide, though, I want to particularly talk about the flow. As I said, you're nowhere close to 1.48 million gallons per day currently, or even projected to be there in the next 40 or 50 years. Because of that, we are recommending that you consider amending your permit to a flow less than 1 MGD, which 0.9 might be a number. We haven't settled on a number, but certainly less than 1 MGD. 1 MGD is kind of a magic number, because if you have a permitted flow less than 1 MGD, I have the benefits here of reduced permitted flow. You have a less stringent operator requirement. Y'all are battling an operator requirement right now. You have to have a B operator out there. I can't remember how often it is. It's pretty often. It's like 7 days a week for so many hours a day. That requirement gets reduced if you reduce the permitted flow. And the reason that's a big benefit is because operators are hard to find right now. They're difficult. So in that plant, it doesn't need somebody out there 7 days a week all the time. The other benefit of reducing the flow is it's going to help some of your capacity issues. And we're going to talk about those more in a minute as we get into the next few slides. You have a lot of equipment processes out there that are not sized for the 1.48 million gallons per day. They are out of capacity, basically. So by reducing that flow, that permitted flow, we can bring some of that equipment and processes into capacity. We're going to talk about that in a minute.
How difficult is it to reduce the permitted flow?
It is not that difficult. It requires an a permit amendment. And it's about 180 to 365 day process. It's a lot of paperwork, but as long as you can demonstrate on paper that, hey, we're not going to exceed that, or we're not getting close to that, the TCEQ is not going to deny it. It's just paperwork at that point, trying to get it amended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because obviously your report would support
Oh, yes,
the desire to get our permitted flow reduced.
without a doubt.
Yeah, Megan, could you do that tomorrow?
Well, we've actually started talking about that already. Keith and I have, and it's been brought up to Kurt, and I believe TCQ has been made aware that we're looking at it.
If we want to.
So I want to quickly talk about the 75/90 rule. I just want you to be aware of that. The TCEQ has almost in every permit, the 75/90 rule. Basically, The 75-90 rule works out like this. If you get to 75% of your flow, permitted flow, then you have to begin planning to expand your plant. If you get to 90% of your permitted flow, you have to be under construction to expand the capacity of your plant. So those are important numbers. So if you look down here at the bottom, in this table at the bottom here, the top row is your current permitted flow, 1.48. So 75% of that is 1.11. Now, keep in mind that you're only at 0.4 right now, and maybe 0.5 into the future. 90% of that is 1.332, which is even a lot higher. So you're nowhere close to the 75-90 rule at your current permit. If we reduced your permit to 0.9 million gallons per day, 75% is 0.675, which again, projection-wise, we show that you won't be even close to that by 2070. And 90% is 0.81. So I wanted you to see that because it's in, those 75-90 is a pretty hard and fast rule. But even if you amended your permit to a lesser flow, you're not in jeopardy of hitting those 75-90 limits. You still have a lot of cushion. So I wanted you to know that. So. Okay, next slide. We did look at your effluent water quality over the past 7 years. That'd be 2015 through 2021. And although, like Megan said, the treatment plant does have issues at times. It gets septic at times. There's a solids issue, which I'm going to talk a lot about here in a minute. Overall, the plant is still able to produce permitted water that meets your permit, effluent water that meets your permit. There's a few exceedances down here in red. You can see there's a couple in certain months. There's a few in other months, but overall, not very many exceedances. So the plant is really producing pretty good effluent water, given its condition. It's doing a pretty good job. That's not to say there's not work that needs to be done, but it's doing a pretty good job.
I feel like there needs to be a disclaimer, nobody drinks it.
Oh yeah, nobody drinks the water. I'm glad you said that, Megan. I'm not encouraging anybody to drink the water coming out of the plant. Okay, so this next slide, this is just an overall look at all of the treatment processes. I'm going to work through this slide pretty quick because I'm going to go into each one of these individually. The first column are the units, the different processes. The next column is the year that, best we could tell, either the year they were built or the year they were most recently rehabbed. I do want you to notice that it's kind of a hodgepodge of years. Don't be alarmed by that. That's not uncommon. I mean, it's an old plant and it gets rehabbed in different phases. So this is not uncommon to see rehab done in phases in different years. So don't be alarmed by that. But I will say some of them have not been rehabbed in some time, 25, 30 years, sometimes almost 45 or 50 years. So some of those processes are getting pretty old. The next column is just the number of units in each process. And then the fourth column is the capacity that's provided by those units. And the next column is the required capacity of those units. That first required column is at your current permitted flow of 1.48 million gallons per day. The highlighted column, which is yellow, shows whether or not that capacity meets your permitted capacity. And you can see that there's a lot of no's there. That's where I was talking about a lot of your current process and equipment does not meet the required capacity. The next column over of required is if that's the required if we reduce the permitted flow. And this is where it's huge. You can see that if we reduce the permitted flow, a lot of that equipment becomes, yes, it meets the capacity requirement. The only exceptions really being your bar screen and your influent lift station are the only two that would not be meeting capacity. So you can see the benefit, not only from an operator standpoint, but from a compliance standpoint of the capacity of the equipment to be able to meet the permitted flow. Hope that makes sense. Okay. All right, so I do want to briefly go through each one of these units. I'm gonna start with, just so you know, we're starting kind of at the head of the plant. We're kind of working through the plant as we go. So as the wastewater comes in, the first thing it hits is the headwork screening. It's just bar screens. It's currently, there's some manual bar screens out there. There's a picture of it there. I mean, it's just a slotted grate. It's just catching the large floatable items is what it's collecting. And currently the operators have to rake that out. This particular process does not meet the current permitted flow, and it would actually still not meet the amended permitted flow. Because of that, you would need to build in more capacity in this particular process. I will say currently there's a project underway that y'all know about. The city is replacing that manual bar screen with a mechanical bar screen, one that runs mechanically and removes the solids, rakes the solids as they're coming in mechanically. So that is an improvement that is taking place right now. The proposed, the recommended improvement is another bar screen basically adjacent to this one, and it would be manual. And the reason it would be manual is because majority of the time, I'd say 90-something% of the time, your flow is going to go through that mechanical bar screen, and it's going to catch it. The only time you're going to need that bypass manual bar screen is when you get high flows. So that would be the purpose of that, but it would solve your capacity issue, and then the cost of that is about $65,000. So that's the screen. The next is Headworks is grit removal, and if you'll notice pretty quick, that was not listed in your table because you do not have grit removal at your plant right now. Not uncommon. A lot of plants do not have grit removal, but it is beneficial to have for a couple of reasons. Number one, you do allow septic haulers into your plant, which is also not uncommon. But septic haulers traditionally, they dump a lot of grit. Grit is just heavy, fine material, and it can be upsetting to a plant. So one benefit of the grit removal system is it will help get that grit out of your system from your septic haulers. Secondly, it will just reduce the overall solids loading that comes into the plant. Anytime you can take solids out of the water before it gets into the actual real heavy treatment process, the better off you are. So it's a beneficial process that you don't have right now, and we're recommending that you consider adding. It's got a heavy price tag of about $437,000. All right, the next process is the lift station. After it comes through the screening, it has to be pumped up to the next process. That's why you have a lift station. It currently does not meet the permitted flow with capacity, and it would still not meet the permitted capacity flow, even if we amended the permit. So the pumps are basically undersized, and they're pretty old too. So the recommendation here is just to upgrade these pumps with a price tag of about $256,000. Primary treatment. Okay, so this is where activated sludge treatment plant. So this is where that activated sludge process really takes place, is in these oxidation ditches. This is where you get water moving around in a ditch. You're adding a lot of air to it, and you got a lot of bugs working in the sludge, kind of eating things up. Not too uncommon to what's going on in your stomach. So this is where a lot of the heavy treatment process takes place, what we call primary treatment. There's actually 2 oxidation ditches on the site right now. You can see in those pictures, the top one, that is an abandoned oxidation ditch. It's currently not in use by the city. And the only oxidation ditch that is currently in use is what I'm calling the new oxidation ditch. That oxidation ditch is the one that we are currently in the project going on out there right now, is installing the new aerators that will make that ditch operate more efficiently, less susceptible to becoming septic and things like that. So it's a huge improvement that needs to take place. And hopefully that gets done about midsummer. As far as capacity, I know I put on here as far as the current permit that it's questionable. The reason I say it's questionable because your current permit actually has both these ditches in the permit, even though you don't use both of them. Whenever we amend the permit, assuming that's what we do, I think we would for sure take the oxidation ditch that's abandoned out of the permit, at least as a treatment unit. There's talk about repurposing that ditch, but don't know for sure how that's going to look. But with the amended permitted flow, we think the new oxidation ditch will be all you need. There is some water quality testing that needs to be done to verify that, but the hope is that that single oxidation ditch meets your capacity for the primary treatment. Because the current ditch is being rehabbed, there's no cost identified for this process because you're already spending money on it. The next process is the secondary treatment. Basically, from the primary treatment, it goes into secondary treatment, and this is just kind of a final polishing of the effluent. It's getting out all the remaining floatables in the water, and basically the effluent, the treated water skims over the top and goes to another process. From a capacity standpoint, it does not meet the current permit capacity, but if you were to reduce and amend the flow in your permit amendment, it would meet capacity. As far as condition, the basins, there's two basins. I only got one picture here, but there's two identical clarifiers for emergency. Both of them are just in need of rehabilitation. The mechanical parts are worn. The basins need to be recoated. So it's just overall maintenance is what needs to be done here, or rehabilitation. The cost is 1.8 million. That's 900,000 per basin because there's two basins, and they wouldn't necessarily have to be done at the same time. You could stage them, do one year, and do one the next year, or wait a couple years, however you decide you want to do it. All right, from the secondary treatment, the effluent goes into tertiary treatment, which is kind of the final step in the treatment process, and it's the chlorine contact basin. You are required to chlorinate, basically disinfect the effluent before it goes out and is released downstream. Currently, the basin does not meet the current permitted flow, but if you reduce the flow in your permit, it would become compliant as far as capacity. The basin's in good working condition, so there's no recommended improvement here. All right, solids handling. Solids handling is not really expressed in the permit from a capacity standpoint, although the TCEQ does have rules on how you handle solids. Solids is something that gets overlooked. Every process in the treatment plant has a byproduct of solids. And if you don't deal with those solids, the plant gets upset. It doesn't like when it has a bunch of solids in it. I mean, it's not too uncommon to just your basic sewer in your house. If you have a bunch of solids build up in your house, it won't flush. It doesn't have anywhere to go. It just gets upset. So you have to manage your solids in your wastewater plant. Typically, the way cities or wastewater plants do that is a combination of two things. That's drying beds and some type of mechanical processing of solids. And that's what you see over here on the right. You have a set of pumps that basically pump your solids from the basins into drying beds, or y'all have what is called a belt press. It's a way to mechanically basically remove the water from the sludge to process it quickly. So that's what y'all have in place right now. The only problem you have right now, though, is the way the belt press is configured, it's inefficient. And then your sludge drying beds, you've got 6 drying beds, but I think only 2 of them are actually operational. So because of that, in the most recent past, Now solids have built up on you pretty bad, and your plant has got pretty upset, and maybe partially why it's upset right now. So handling solids, removing solids from the plant, processing them, getting them off-site is certainly something that needs to be improved upon. Our recommendation is to reconfigure the belt press operations, which I know the city, I think, is going to do in-house, and then rehabilitate the drying beds, and then construct a new belt press facility that just operates more efficiently. We found that the more efficient you make the process of getting rid of the solids, the easier it is for the operators to stay on top of it. It just makes it easier. So, pretty big price tag here on these. Rehabilitating the drying beds is about $250,000, and building a new facility for the belt press is about $812,000.
So the recommendation is to utilize both.
Yes. Okay, good. No, I'm glad you said that. Thank you, Megan. If you have a mechanical sludge processing system like a belt press, there's others called centrifuges or a screw press, a Java belt press, you have to have a secondary means to get rid of the solids, to process the solids. So you have to have the drying beds as a redundancy, as a backup to the belt press. If you just had drying beds, you can just have drying beds, but a mechanical process that relies on electricity and polymers, and it doesn't just, I mean, the drying bed, you just put it out there and dries. There's a lot more that is required to make that belt press work. So if it's not working, you got a problem. That's why you got to have redundancy. You got to have a backup. So you have to have both of them. Yes.
And just so council's aware, our backup is pushing it all into the old racetrack. Because when the belt press goes down, our drying beds are not in compliance. They have nowhere to put it. So they put it into the old racetrack, which is a good place to put it and not on the ground, but TCQ does not like that. So that does get us in trouble with TCQ.
We have 6, why are we only using 2?
For the drying beds. Many years ago, I can't say who, when, where, why, but someone decided to modify them themselves. And in the process ruined a couple. And then I believe they tried to clean them out with a backhoe or something and tore up the liners. And before that, we had drying bags that would go in the drying beds that the guys would have to fill up. And then once they were full, they would actually have to cut them open and then remove the solids into another place.
Well, that sounds like fun.
It's a lot of moving around.
Can't wait.
Or your boots and gloves.
Oh, I've got boots, absolutely.
The city has managed to move it around in many different ways.
And the big factor here is that the mechanical belt press will be able to take the solids that it gets a lot more of the moisture out, and they will put it directly into a dumpster, which can be hauled away. So we don't continuously have to rehab it.
Oh,
Yeah, minimizing how many times you actually have to move and handle the sludge is key to being efficient.
And they move it around a lot more than they need to.
So like I said, on the electrical system, this was very high level. We didn't get into the weeds with this because what you really need is a good electrician to come out there and go through everything and determine, hey, do you have proper grounding? Are all the connections verified? It's more of an overall state of health of the electrical system. From our standpoint, we mainly looked at, hey, is the equipment operating properly? Do you have enough electrical capacity to operate the equipment that's on site? And the answer is yes. So that was our main goal here, is to determine if that was possible, and it is. But we did want to recommend that you consider getting an electrician out there just to go through everything and make sure that it's operating properly. All right. capital improvements priority list. One of the big tasks that I know your staff and administration wanted us to do was work with them on establishing a priority. So that's what you see on this page. There's some that are identified as in progress, and actually those two things the city's able to accomplish in-house. And then there's a high priority, which is 0 to 2 years, and then a medium priority, which is 2 to 4 years. And based on staff and the administration's recommendation, they wanted most of the high priority stuff at 0 to 2 years. So this is, I think the emphasis is this is high priority. It's important. Work through these real quick. In progress, the tertiary treatment and solids handling. We talked about the belt press a little bit. I know that the city is reconfiguring some of how that is processed. We didn't talk about the flow pacing of the chemical injection, but the equipment is already out there. It's just getting it to work properly. Number 3 is what we talked about, amending the permit. That is super high priority in the city's opinion and our opinion as well, that permit be amended just as soon as you can. The next item is solids handling, addressing the solids by rehabbing and reconstructing those 6 drying beds. Then having somebody come out to do an electrical surveys at number 5. Number 6 and 7 and 8 are all addressing the headworks issue of the lift station pumps, the manual bar screen, and then the grit removal system. 9 is replacing one of the clarifiers, internal components, and recoating the walls. Number 10 is, we didn't talk about this as well either, but one of the things we kind of figured out through this process of evaluating the plan is that there's so many projects that were done, and every engineer that did a project used a different datum for their surveying. And so there's not a consistent topographic survey out there. And a good topographic survey would help us from an engineering standpoint really understand and have confidence in the hydraulics of the plant. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to get into the real technicalities of it, but this is more from an engineering standpoint. This would be really good for not just us to have, any other engineering group that came in and worked for y'all to have a good understanding of the hydraulics. We need good topographic survey to do that. And it's not that expensive. It's kind of the cheapest thing on here. Item 11 is the secondary, the second clarifier, rehabbing the second clarifier. And then finally, item 12, which is a big ticket item, is really overhauling the whole belt press facility and process and making it super efficient. And then last slide of content is the opinion of probable costs, which is $4.6 million. But this includes beyond just like what we've talked about costs so far. This includes all of the non-construction costs like surveying, permitting, engineering. Those are all included in here, plus some contingencies. So if you were going to go after funding, like a grant or a loan, which we put in the PIF for Water Development Board, this 4.6 is a more realistic number that you want to take to that application process. So, and that does everything we talked about. That's $4.6 million. Before I take any questions, I want to thank, of course, Jess, Keith, and all of their staff, because this was a pretty big undertaking, just kind of pulling information together. I want to thank a couple of my colleagues. Alan Phillips is in our Lubbock office. Actually, Alan and Josh are in our Lubbock office. They really did the heavy lifting on the report, which I think y'all have a copy of. Okay. They did a lot of the real heavy lifting on that. I get to come here and be the show pony, I guess. I was very involved as well, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
So how far in the future will this take us?
If you did everything in that $4.6 million, if you did it today and it got completed in a year or whatever, you know, the useful life of wastewater equipment is about 20 years. So, I mean, you would need to start planning to rehab some of these components within by by another 20 years.
So that's.
It's just a harsh environment. These mechanical components, they operate in a harsh environment. So they do not last 40 years, 60 years, like some of your water side, your treatment side, your water treatment side of things. This is a harsh environment, these processes, equipment.
And that's the key reason for this. It's the planning feature. And the maintenance. It's getting it where it needs to be. And then ensuring that we properly maintain it and replace as needed, not band-aid it.
Which we've been doing.
Yes, I think we're running out of Band-Aids, aren't we?
We're done.
Yeah, so 4.6 mil looks pretty pricey, but in the long run, you know, we add all the years we've been Band-Aiding it and the issues we've had out there, you know, it could probably be well worth it.
But he's also given us a priority list and some of the things that might need repairing. If we re-permit it, they would fall within the permit. It could last a little bit longer before we had to invest in it.
Yeah, and the need for some of these facilities, I'll take the clarifiers, for instance. The clarifiers it's $1.8 million to rehab those. Those need to be rehabbed regardless of whether or not you reduce the permitted flow or not, because they are just in need of repair and rehabilitation. The reducing of the permit would just bring them into compliance from a capacity standpoint. That's what reducing the permit would do. So they're related, but somewhat unrelated as it pertains to need for rehabilitation. I hope that made sense.
Okay,
Any questions?
I'm ready.
Okay,
When do we start?
yeah, or today.
What's the lottery tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
So-
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it.
And your presentation.
Very helpful, very informative.
And now the public knows what it's gonna take out there.
Every time you flush your
Yeah,
mouth,
just-
remember that.
Yep. So I'm gonna go ahead and call for the question then. All those in favor? Okay, opposed, like sign. So motion carries unanimously. Thank you all very much. Let's go to item 3. This is Councilman Stokes.
Approve the second and final reading of ordinance 2022-3-01 and ordinance amending chapter 90 taxation article 4 point operated establishments to the Alpine Code of Ordinances, providing for a maximum number of machines per establishment, providing clarification regarding the initial special use permit fee.
Okay. Need the motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, discussion.
We tabled these two from last time. We have gone back and forth. We have made no decisions. We've kept these people waiting. They jumped through hoops and we table it and I think we need to make a decision and not be the moral police. I'm not gonna police these establishments. I've referred to it as we don't police the bars and the alcoholics go in there. We don't police the grocery stores and obese people buy groceries. We don't need to police this. The police will police it. They're doing what we've asked. We need to set an amount. And that'd be the end of it. I think 20 machines is a good in between. We've heard 4, we've heard unlimited, we've heard 10. I came up with 20 and those are my thoughts. I think it needs to be done. The people are applying, they're doing what we ask of them and we aren't giving them an answer. So.
Yeah, I think it is time for us to give them an answer.
And I think the amendments that have been made to the ordinance with the fees and the quantity of machines is acceptable within the industry.
Okay. Any more discussion? So we're at 20. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, motion carries. It's 20 machines. Item 4.
Me
Cheers
also.
again.
That's it, yeah. Approve the first reading of ordinance 2022-4-01 and ordinance repealing ordinance 2017-05-02, which to remove the no parking section on Sul Ross Avenue and 8th.
Okay, need a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve first reading of ordinance 2022-04-01.
The second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's made and second. Discussion.
This is a little area right across from the American Legion, right?
Yeah,
Which is about 10 feet long or something like that.
probably a bit longer, I think, but
Yeah.
It's where I park every time when I go get a fish.
Well, I know we
dinner.
put bags over the signs.
yeah,
for the
I did not do
motorcycle
that.
rallies, so-
yeah. So,
It's also the same spot that city employees park
Park.
when they run into the
Yes.
building.
yeah. So any more discussion on this? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Let's move to item number 5. And this is our city secretary.
Item 5 is approve order 2022-04-02, an order appointing and setting the rate of pay for election officials, designating the number of election workers, designating the early voting ballot board for the May 7th, 2022 general city election.
Okay, need a motion.
I would make a motion that we approve order 2022-04-02.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion's made and second. Any discussion on this? Seeing none? Okay, all those in favor? With a smile on Teal's face, it's unanimous. Item 6, city manager.
Approved resolution 2022-04-14, a resolution setting fees for the Alpine Municipal Swimming Pool.
Okay, motion.
I move that we approve resolution 2022-04-14.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
Just a side note, there are no changes from the prior.
Okay, very good. Any more discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, motion carries. Item 7, city manager.
Approved resolution 2022-04-15, a resolution authorizing the city of Alpine to participate in the Federal Emergency Management Administration Hazard Mitigation Grant Program.
Okay, need a motion.
I motion that we approve resolution 2022-04-15.
And second,
I'll second it.
okay, discussion.
Just a little insight. This is the grant that actually came up. It does have a tight deadline. Policy requires we take it before council. This would cover a portion of the generators. Council did set aside money in the past. This unfortunately only covers the water portion. We would have to further research finding additional funding for the animal shelter. We wanted to stay, and the Civic Center, we wanted to stay within our means of what we could match. We didn't want to go out for more than we could chew, but at the same time, it addresses our current issues and has us compliant with Senate Bill 3.
Okay. Any more? All those in favor? Raise your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Item 8, city manager.
Application, approve an application for a special use permit for the applicant Ho Hung To. The applicant is requesting a special use permit for the purpose of establishing a coin-operated machine business. The property in question is located at 1906 West Highway 90. Record property owner is Charles Sanders.
Okay, need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the application.
To the second.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries. Item 9.
Approve an application for a special use permit for the applicant Chai Thao Vo, the applicant is requesting a special use permit for the purpose of establishing a coin-operated machine business. The property in question is located at 2000 East Highway 90. Record property owner is Vimel Patel.
Okay, motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the application for the special use permit.
Okay, second.
I'll second it.
All right, motion's made in second. Discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion carries. Item 10.
Award contract for paving for the Alpine Country Club Estates to Jarrett Dirt Work. Also authorizing the city manager to negotiate the proposal from Jarrett Dirt Work for the paving of an airport taxiway responsive to the request for proposals issued for paving services not to exceed $60,000.
Okay, need a motion.
I would make a motion that we accept item 10.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made in second. Any discussion?
Just a little background. This is a RFP. We did initiate the first one. It was over the budgeted amount. This is the second time we've done it. Jarrett did come in the lowest. Unfortunately, with the taxiway, it still exceeds what we have allocated for that project. It would be negotiating with him to pave a portion of it, not all of it, not to exceed the 60,000. And the Alpine Country Club Estates is long overdue for some help.
Yes, it is. Way over. Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you all very much. Okay, city council comments. We'll start with, on my left side with Councilor Johnson.
Well, I would like to extend my thanks to Megan for this, working with Jared to get this contract for the Country Club Estates. It's something her predecessor couldn't and wouldn't do, and my predecessor couldn't and wouldn't do. And it's a start. The concept is to go at $100,000 a year, a little bit at a time, and that was one of Megan's great suggestions, that we may not be able to do it all at once, but we can do maybe a half a mile this year and a half a mile next year. But I congratulate Megan for thinking outside the box and making this happen.
Sarah?
I'd also like to thank Gio and Megan for everything that they do. You know, we've worked really hard as a council, and it's really nice to be able to go in and discuss some of the concerns of our citizens and get your input. And I enjoy coming in and visiting with you and getting the answers, that I can give back to the citizens that are asking questions. So I want to thank both of you for that. And I also want to thank the ladies in the front office here. They're always working so hard, and I really, their attitude is always great, having to deal with some people that get upset about some of the bills and things, but they always seem to have a happy face, and I'm very thankful to those ladies and their hard work in that front office.
Thank you.
Oh, you know me.
I know you.
Early voting, go vote. Everybody needs to vote. None of this happens if people don't vote. We need rain. Earth Day. Earth Day is this Friday, a huge thing at the park. I've put together a dark skies coloring pages contest that will be good for the kids, for the art students at Alpine High School. The sheriff will be judging it at 5. He hadn't seen the pictures. He asked, and I said no. So I'd like to welcome Linda. I'm going to check with her tomorrow, make sure I don't have enough for more. Thanks, Marcy, for finding us grants. Thanks, Megan, for having these people do this like we discussed. See, that's the part we appreciate. So we talk about it, and then you came up with a whole dang big thing. Numbers and everything. So, and that's what we need. That's the start. So thanks.
I want to thank everyone for being here this evening, and we kind of got educated on the waste treatment plant. Now you know what it takes to operate that system and how long it's been overdue, and just with a Band-Aid after Band-Aid. I've been here 6 years. I've gone up there several times and looked at it and talked to the guys out there, and I mean, poor guys, my hat's off to it because they have done a fantastic job. And Keith, you taking over and helping to continue to run, and maybe we find those monies to get that thing going, because that's been in the back of my mind since day one. So hopefully we'll get that done. Megan, again, my hat's off to you for the great job that you've done in redirecting the city in a positive direction, which has been overdue. You know, it's been exciting, it's interesting now, and very educational now to come to meetings where we actually are learning what's taken on behind the scenes. So hats off to you and to Gio for putting out our paperwork out there on a timely manner. And also when I call Gio, I get an answer right away. I don't have to wait. So, you know, usually I have a resident on the other end or in front of me, but I pick up the phone and within minutes I get an answer on it. So thank you all very much. And the council also, y'all have done a great job. And it's a brand new council. Jerry, you've been here before, but you guys have done a fantastic job. So my hat's off to you.
And to you.
Yes. Thank you. Y'all have a good evening. This meeting is adjourned.
Myself.
Yeah.